The declaration arrived without warning, transmitted across every inhabited system in 1,000 synchronized bursts of light. Earth, the birthplace of humanity, was formally classified as a cosmic threat anomaly. No charges of aggression were listed. No crimes were cited. The justification was simple, chilling, and final: humanity evolved too quickly, adapted too efficiently, and learned too fast. Their creativity outpaced prediction. Their warfare advanced in leaps instead of steps. Their resilience defied statistical models. The galaxy did not fear what humans had done. It feared what they might someday become. Within hours, the verdict hardened into law. Trade routes collapsed. Communication relays were severed. Travel corridors folded shut. A silent perimeter of warships sealed Earth's entire star system, forbidding any ship from crossing in or out. Human colonies scattered across space were instantly abandoned, cut off from supply lines and support, their populations stranded in hostile voids. Medical shipments froze mid-transport. Energy contracts vanished. Agricultural exports ceased. Entire economies built around human trade disintegrated overnight. What had taken generations to construct was erased in a single cycle. On Earth, the first days passed in disbelief. Leaders scrambled for answers that never came. Scientists searched for loopholes that did not exist. Transmission after transmission returned only static. The galaxy had not merely turned away. It had erased humanity from relevance. As supply reserves dwindled, reality set in. Factories slowed. Hospitals rationed power. Satellite networks began to decay. The planetary infrastructure that had relied on interstellar cooperation began unraveling piece by piece. Humanity did not panic. Not at first. They reorganized, repurposed, and rationed. Engineers dismantled orbital structures to salvage materials. Fusion plants were stripped and rebuilt to increase output. Entire industries converted to emergency manufacturing. Cities darkened as power grids were restructured to prioritize survival. It was not comfort they sought, but continuity. Humanity had always adapted, and now it adapted again, grinding its civilization inward, compressing complexity into efficiency. Years passed. Then decades. The effects of isolation deepened. Medical technology once supplied by distant allies became irreplaceable. Life expectancy declined. Rare diseases resurfaced. Complex surgeries became dangerous gambles. Children were born into a world slowly forgetting the stars. Generations grew up without ever seeing alien skies. Yet even then, humanity endured. Schools shifted toward engineering, physics, biology, and survival sciences. Knowledge became the most guarded resource. Innovation replaced luxury. The human spirit, stripped of abundance, sharpened into relentless focus. Across the galaxy, however, Earth faded. News cycles moved on. Empires rose and fell. Political crises eclipsed distant tragedies. Humanity became a footnote in historical records, a cautionary tale about unchecked potential. Eventually, Earth's last transmissions were archived and labeled as remnants of a civilization in terminal decline. Galactic scholars predicted extinction within 3 centuries. Official registries marked humanity as functionally extinct, not through annihilation, but abandonment. And yet, one species refused to accept that verdict. They were small, obscure, and economically fragile, living in a sparse cluster of systems rarely charted by major trade routes. Their fleets were outdated. Their technology unremarkable. Their influence non-existent. They held no seats of consequence in the galactic councils, no armies capable of defiance, no leverage of value. Yet when Earth was condemned, they alone protested. Their appeal was ignored. So they acted. Under the cover of unmonitored asteroid belts and drifting debris clouds, they constructed covert supply corridors. Stealth freighters, barely holding together under their own aging hulls, slipped through the galactic blockade, carrying medical supplies, nutrient cultures, genetic archives, and raw materials. Their scientists worked in hidden labs, redesigning obsolete technology so it could be maintained without external support. Their traders dismantled their own infrastructure to salvage parts for human machines. Entire production chains were redirected, feeding Earth at the expense of their own development. They knew the risks. Sanctions followed swiftly. Trade restrictions crippled their economy. Political exile severed them from major alliances. Their systems fell into recession, then stagnation, then quiet decline. But they continued. Because to them, abandonment was the greatest crime a civilization could commit. For generations, they sustained humanity in silence. They watched Earth struggle, rebuild, falter, and adapt. They monitored subtle technological shifts, noticing patterns no galactic analyst bothered to study. Humanity was changing. Without external influence, their science took unexpected directions. Energy manipulation advanced beyond theoretical constraints. Artificial intelligence merged with human cognition. Biological engineering eliminated disease and strengthened physical resilience. Survival forged innovation faster than prosperity ever had. Then, slowly, Earth went quiet. Supply shipments began returning untouched. Communication pings found no receivers. Observational drones detected massive construction deep within the solar system, hidden behind layers of gravitational distortion. Then those signals vanished too. Humanity did not call for help. They did not broadcast warnings. They simply disappeared. To the galaxy, it confirmed extinction. To their lone allies, it meant uncertainty. They continued sending supplies for decades, then centuries, until resources failed and silence became unavoidable. Their civilization aged. Their stars dimmed. Their population declined. Yet, even as they weakened, they preserved humanity's memory. Data archives. Cultural records. Scientific histories. Stories of human courage and stubborn hope passed quietly from generation to generation. They did not expect repayment. They believed extinction had claimed Earth. Their loyalty was not an investment. It was a conviction. And so, when hostile fleets finally converged on their remaining systems, seeking to erase their weakened civilization entirely, they did not beg. Their final transmission was not a plea for rescue. It was a farewell. A single broadcast sent blindly into the void, carrying only a message of gratitude. To a species they believed was long dead. They did not know that far beyond known space, inside folded dimensions of compressed gravity and engineered darkness, humanity had been watching. They did not know that the storm they had preserved was ready to return. Centuries passed, and the galaxy forgot. Humanity slipped from living memory into abstract history, then into myth. Star charts erased Earth's coordinates. Academic databases archived human civilization under extinct anomalies. Children across 1,000 worlds were taught that humans had failed because they advanced too quickly, that ambition without restraint inevitably led to collapse. The narrative hardened into doctrine. Humanity had destroyed itself, and the galaxy had merely stepped aside to avoid collateral damage. No one questioned it. Trade empires expanded. Military coalitions stabilized their borders. Technology plateaued into comfortable stagnation. Innovation slowed as civilizations reached equilibrium, content to refine what already existed rather than challenge fundamental limits. Progress became incremental, cautious, predictable. The galaxy grew vast, wealthy, and complacent. Only one species remembered. They watched their own civilization wither beneath sanctions that never lifted. Their trade routes collapsed. Their political influence dissolved. Entire star systems were relinquished to pay debts imposed by galactic authorities. Their fleets rusted. Their orbital stations decayed. Their cultural output faded as survival replaced art and exploration. Yet, in hidden vaults beneath their capital world, they preserved humanity's history with meticulous devotion. Ancient human music echoed softly in forgotten halls. Archived recordings of Earth's oceans, forests, and cities played in silent galleries. Translated human literature was etched into crystalline data slates, passed from one generation to the next. Their scholars taught children about a species that refused to surrender, about a people who adapted when stripped of everything but will. Their elders warned that kindness rarely survived power. Their youth listened and believed. Generations later, the galactic climate shifted. Border wars reignited. Resource scarcity triggered expansionist campaigns. Ancient rivalries resurfaced with renewed ferocity. And the smallest, weakest civilizations became targets. The ally species stood directly in the path of one such campaign. Their systems were rich in rare isotopes. Their planets, though worn, remained habitable. Their defenses, outdated and minimal, posed no deterrent. To expansionist coalitions, their extinction was a logistical formality. Fleets assembled in silence. War formations converged along hyperspace corridors. Entire armadas of battleships and carrier platforms prepared to descend upon their remaining worlds. Warnings arrived late. Evacuation was impossible. Resistance was symbolic at best. They understood their fate within minutes. Yet panic did not follow. Instead, a strange calm settled across their civilization. Cities dimmed their lights, conserving energy for defense grids that would not hold. Civilian vessels clustered around planetary orbits, prepared for last-minute evacuations that could not succeed. Families gathered. Cultural ceremonies long abandoned were revived. Songs not sung in centuries were whispered into the thin atmospheres of dying worlds. In their final council session, no strategies were debated. No military plans proposed. There was nothing left to calculate. They chose remembrance. A single broadcast was prepared, transmitted through a network of ancient quantum relays that had once carried their secret supply routes to Earth. Most had long fallen silent. Some still functioned, buried deep in gravitational shadows where detection was improbable. The message was simple. It did not beg for help. It did not request intervention. It did not curse their attackers or condemn the galaxy. It spoke of gratitude. Of a species that, when abandoned by the universe, had refused to surrender. Of a civilization that had adapted when left alone. Of a hope that somewhere, in whatever form humanity still existed, they would remember that they were not entirely forsaken. The signal vanished into the dark. Then the fleets arrived. Space ignited as hyperspace ruptures tore open reality. Thousands of warships emerged, blotting out stars. Energy signatures flooded sensor arrays. Targeting systems locked onto planetary shields that flickered weakly in response. The first barrage struck orbital defenses, vaporizing ancient stations in seconds. Moons shattered. Defensive grids collapsed. Atmospheres ignited under thermal stress. Entire cities vanished beneath precision bombardment. Resistance lasted less than an hour. Their final defense fleet, a relic formation of patched cruisers and retrofitted carriers, launched in defiance. They were annihilated within minutes, torn apart by weapons that outclassed them by centuries of technological progress. The invaders advanced inward, preparing for planetary sterilization. And then space itself convulsed. Gravity surged without warning. Hyperspace corridors collapsed mid-transition. Warships were flung violently from faster-than-light travel, their hulls screaming as inertial forces shredded internal structures. Communication arrays overloaded. Navigation systems failed. Across the entire star system, sensors detected impossible mass signatures forming inside local spacetime. The attacking fleets halted, uncertain. Then the void ruptured. Vast shadows emerged, eclipsing stars. Colossal structures unfolded from compressed dimensions, their silhouettes larger than moons, their surfaces layered in shifting energy lattices. Entire battle formations disappeared within gravitational distortions as reality bent around approaching hulls. No known civilization possessed such technology. No recorded species commanded vessels of such scale. Silence fell across every channel. Then a signal flooded every frequency simultaneously. Not a transmission. A presence. It carried no hostility. No threat. Only clarity. Humanity had returned. The human fleet stretched beyond sensor range, an armada constructed not of metal alone, but of controlled gravity, dark energy frameworks, and adaptive matter that reshaped itself in response to incoming forces. Their vessels did not radiate heat. They did not emit conventional propulsion signatures. They simply moved, bending space-time as effortlessly as water flows downhill. The attacking armadas stood frozen, overwhelmed by scale and impossibility. Human ships did not engage immediately. Instead, they positioned themselves between the invaders and the surviving planets, forming an unbroken shield of mass and energy. Space stabilized behind them, warping into structured geometries that absorbed and neutralized all hostile targeting systems. A second transmission followed. Short. Precise. Final. Disengage. No demand for surrender. No ultimatum. No justification. The attackers hesitated for exactly 3 seconds. Then they fired. What followed lasted less than a heartbeat. Human countermeasures activated before hostile weapons completed their discharge cycles. Entire fleets vanished, erased by gravitational collapses that compressed matter into subatomic fragments. Energy beams dissolved into redirected vacuum flows. Warships were folded inward, crushed into singularities, and extinguished without debris. No explosions. No wreckage. No survivors. Across multiple systems, hostile armadas ceased to exist in absolute silence. Only then did humanity advance. Their vessels descended gently into stable orbital formations around the ally worlds, radiating controlled fields that repaired planetary shields, stabilized tectonic stresses, and neutralized atmospheric damage in real time. Oceans calmed. Wildfires extinguished. Fractured crusts reknit themselves beneath invisible hands. Medical platforms deployed across every inhabited world, releasing swarms of autonomous constructs that healed wounds, restored damaged tissue, and revived those buried beneath rubble. Entire hospitals were reconstructed within hours, their technology indistinguishable from miracles. In the skies above their capital world, the largest human vessel altered its configuration, unfolding into a structure that dwarfed continents. From its core, a single message transmitted toward the planet below. We heard you. And for the first time in centuries, the small, forgotten species realized that the storm they had protected had finally come home. Humanity did not pause to explain itself. It acted. Across every surviving world of their allies, construction platforms unfolded from compressed space, releasing vast networks of autonomous machines that descended through shattered atmospheres and broken skies. They rebuilt cities faster than natural disaster could erase them. Collapsed structures were lifted and reassembled at the molecular level. Cracked continents were stabilized by deep-core gravitational anchors that locked tectonic plates into harmonic equilibrium. Oceans purified themselves as nanoscopic systems neutralized pollutants and restored ecological balance. Within days, worlds that had been moments from extinction began to breathe again. Entire biospheres were resurrected. Where forests had burned, new ecosystems unfurled in accelerated growth cycles, trees rising hundreds of meters within hours, their roots stabilizing soil and repairing nutrient chains. Extinct species were restored from archived genetic blueprints, reintroduced into environments now optimized for their survival. Coral reefs reassembled across planetary seas. Atmospheric regulators recalibrated planetary climates, reversing centuries of industrial and military damage. Energy infrastructure followed. Humanity deployed stellar collectors that wrapped around nearby stars, harvesting fusion output and redistributing it through quantum conduits. Power became limitless. Cities no longer required grids. Each structure generated its own supply, drawing energy directly from controlled space-time fluctuations. Scarcity vanished overnight. Medical technology advanced beyond comprehension. Disease ceased to exist. Cellular repair systems reversed aging. Damaged organs regenerated within minutes. Neuroreconstruction restored memory loss, trauma, and psychological damage inflicted across generations of struggle. The wounded were healed. The broken were restored. Entire populations emerged renewed, not merely surviving, but reborn. Yet humanity did not rule. They did not impose governance, demand tribute, or claim territory. Their presence carried no conquest, no hierarchy, no subjugation. Every system remained under the sovereignty of its original inhabitants. Human constructs operated in silence, guided by algorithms built not for dominance, but for service. The galaxy watched in stunned disbelief. For centuries, power had been defined by fleet numbers, territorial control, and political alliances. Humanity rewrote that definition without firing a declaration of war. They demonstrated that true dominance lay not in destruction, but in absolute mastery of creation. As their ally species recovered, humanity expanded the restoration effort. Long-dead stars were reignited through controlled gravitational compression. Brown dwarfs were transformed into fusion-active stellar bodies, birthing new suns across dark regions of space. Planetary systems once written off as lifeless were converted into thriving habitats. Entire sectors bloomed with civilization where void had reigned. Trade networks reformed around human engineering hubs. Medical research exploded as knowledge once lost returned enhanced beyond imagination. Galactic infrastructure accelerated into a new era overnight, fueled by technology that defied every established physical limit. Then came the message. Humanity transmitted across every known frequency, flooding communication arrays, planetary relays, and quantum channels simultaneously. No encryption. No distortion. No propaganda. Only truth. They spoke of abandonment. Of isolation. Of centuries spent rebuilding not merely civilization, but understanding. They described how humanity, forced inward, turned its focus toward mastering the foundations of existence itself. Gravity. Time. Energy. Consciousness. They explained that survival demanded evolution, and evolution demanded transcendence. They admitted their transformation. Humanity no longer existed as a species bound to planets. They had become a roaming civilization, their populations distributed across mobile habitats, stellar megastructures, and folded spatial dimensions. Death was no longer final. Identity extended beyond biological form. Minds integrated with artificial constructs, expanding perception across quantum layers. Existence itself became adaptable. Yet their message carried no arrogance. They reminded the galaxy of the moment Earth had been forsaken. Of the small species that had defied law, power, and consequence to preserve a dying civilization. Of centuries of sacrifice made in silence. They declared that debt had no numerical value. It could not be repaid through wealth, territory, or power. It could only be honored through transformation. Humanity pledged eternal protection to their allies. Any threat against them would be met with absolute response. Their systems would stand shielded beyond the reach of conquest. Their people would never again face extinction. Across galactic capitals, fear rippled. Empires that once dictated cosmic law suddenly found themselves irrelevant. Fleets that had dominated sectors were now insignificant before a force that manipulated reality itself. Political hierarchies fractured as leaders struggled to comprehend a civilization no longer constrained by conventional existence. Many feared annihilation. It did not come. Humanity neither punished nor conquered. They dismantled no governments. They seized no territory. They erased no cultures. Their judgment was moral, not violent. They reminded the galaxy that power without compassion created stagnation. That fear-driven governance suffocated growth. That abandonment, not aggression, was the greatest crime. Their final declaration echoed across 1,000 civilizations. Loyalty is remembered. Betrayal is recorded. Compassion is eternal. And then, humanity withdrew. Not into darkness, but into distant observation. Their fleets dispersed across uncharted dimensions, maintaining silent vigilance. They left behind technologies that elevated civilizations without enslaving them. Medical systems, energy stabilizers, planetary shields, and disaster prevention arrays ensured that no species would ever again face extinction through neglect. The galaxy changed. Where once expansion was driven by conquest, it became guided by cooperation. Where power had been hoarded, it became distributed. Where fear had governed, trust slowly took root. Humanity's presence reshaped not merely infrastructure, but philosophy itself. And at the center of this transformation stood the small, obscure species who had once defied the universe. Their civilization rose into prominence, not through dominance, but through respect. Their worlds became centers of learning, diplomacy, and cultural preservation. Their people traveled freely across systems, welcomed as symbols of moral courage. Their history was taught in academies across the galaxy as proof that even the smallest voice could reshape destiny. Yet they never claimed credit. They simply remembered. They remembered the starving worlds they had fed, the children they had saved, the civilization they had preserved when all others turned away. And in the silent depths of space, humanity watched. They watched stars ignite where darkness once ruled. They observed new civilizations take their first steps beyond planetary gravity. They listened as distant species spoke of unity instead of dominance. They did not interfere. They did not command. They simply ensured that the lesson endured. That in a universe vast beyond comprehension, compassion remained the greatest force ever discovered. And that when humanity repaid a debt, it did not do so in kind. It did so in eternity. The transformation of their allies did not end with survival. Humanity elevated them beyond anything they had ever imagined possible. Entire planetary systems were restructured. Artificial moons were installed into stable orbits, acting as gravity anchors, climate regulators, and energy distribution hubs. Starforges ignited within controlled stellar cores, producing matter and energy in quantities that erased material scarcity entirely. Interstellar gateways unfolded between systems, allowing instantaneous travel across distances that once required generations to cross. What had once been a fragile civilization struggling to endure became a nexus of galactic movement, knowledge, and diplomacy. Humanity reconstructed their cultural identity as carefully as their infrastructure. Lost languages were recovered from fragmented records and restored to living use. Art forms that had vanished under centuries of survival-driven austerity were revived through immersive simulation archives. Ancient architecture was rebuilt alongside modern megastructures, ensuring that progress never erased memory. Their history became a living presence instead of a fading relic. Education transformed overnight. Human cognitive frameworks allowed accelerated learning, enabling entire populations to absorb advanced physics, stellar engineering, biological mastery, and multidimensional mathematics within years instead of lifetimes. Scholars who had once struggled to understand basic galactic science now shaped theories that redefined universal constants. Their academies attracted students from across the galaxy, becoming the foremost centers of intellectual development. Medicine reached unprecedented heights. Mortality plummeted. Lifespans expanded dramatically, while quality of life surged. Genetic disorders vanished. Injuries that once meant permanent disability became trivial inconveniences. Mental health stabilization technologies healed generational trauma, allowing emotional scars carried for centuries to finally fade. Their people emerged not merely restored but whole. Yet humanity placed no conditions on these gifts. They demanded no tribute. They imposed no alliances. They claimed no territory. Their assistance carried no expectation of control. The galaxy struggled to comprehend this restraint. Empires accustomed to dominance expected hierarchy. Military coalitions anticipated retaliation. Political institutions braced for collapse. None arrived. Humanity neither seized authority nor dismantled existing power structures. They simply bypassed them. Instead, they extended their influence through stability. Planetary defense arrays were distributed freely, ensuring that no civilization could again be annihilated by surprise assault. Energy generation platforms eliminated competition over resources. Environmental regulation systems prevented ecological collapse. Human technology became the foundation upon which galactic peace gradually stabilized. War declined. Not through fear, but through irrelevance. When every world possessed infinite energy, limitless resources, and absolute defensive security, conquest lost its meaning. Expansion ceased to be profitable. Exploitation became unnecessary. The motivations that had fueled conflict for millennia dissolved into irrelevance. Galactic politics shifted from territorial ambition to cooperative development. Humanity did not govern this transition. They guided it. They served as architects rather than rulers, establishing frameworks that encouraged mutual reliance instead of domination. Their interventions were precise, subtle, and restrained, correcting instability without imposing control. Entire sectors stabilized under their influence, not through force, but through systemic harmony. Across countless systems, monuments were raised. Not to humanity, but to the principle they embodied. Statues, data spires, and planetary memorials commemorated the moment compassion reshaped destiny. Historical records preserve the story of Earth's abandonment and resurrection, not as tragedy, but as warning. Educational doctrines embedded its lessons deep into cultural identity, that fear breeds stagnation, that abandonment invites extinction, and that loyalty shapes civilizations. The small species at the heart of this transformation became symbols of moral courage. Their representatives served as diplomats across galactic assemblies, mediating disputes, guiding policy, and shaping ethical frameworks. Their voice carried weight far beyond military or economic power. They were listened to because they had once chosen sacrifice over safety. And the galaxy remembered. Generations passed. Civilizations rose into golden ages of creativity, exploration, and philosophical growth. Interstellar travel expanded beyond mapped regions. New species were encountered, welcomed, and integrated peacefully. The boundaries of known space stretched outward, illuminated by human-engineered stars and stabilized by gravitational frameworks that allowed life to flourish where void once reigned. Throughout it all, humanity remained present but distant. Their fleets patrolled unseen dimensions, maintaining cosmic balance without intrusion. Their constructs monitored stellar stability, quantum fluctuations, and existential threats that no other civilization could yet perceive. They stood watch over reality itself, ensuring that the fragile equilibrium they had established endured. They intervened only when extinction loomed. And when they did, entire civilizations were preserved without ever knowing how close they had come to annihilation. In time, humanity's story transformed from legend into doctrine. Young civilizations studied their rise not as myth, but as roadmap. Their scientific principles guided technological development. Their philosophical frameworks shaped governance. Their moral standards influenced interstellar law. Yet humanity never claimed credit. They remained observers. Guardians. Custodians of a galaxy that had once cast them aside. On a quiet world orbiting a rejuvenated star, the allied species held a ceremony every cycle. No spectacle. No grandeur. Just a moment of remembrance. They gathered in simple halls, illuminated by soft stellar light, and recited the names of the first humans they had saved. Farmers. Engineers. Children. Medics. Teachers. Ordinary lives. Lives that had sparked extraordinary destiny. They remembered the cost of loyalty. And the magnitude of its reward. Across the galaxy, civilizations thrived, rarely considering the fragile balance that sustained them. Few truly grasped the scale of human vigilance. Fewer still understood the consequences of betraying that trust. But humanity remembered. They remembered isolation. They remembered abandonment. They remembered the quiet courage of a small species that had chosen compassion over survival. And they remembered their promise. Never again would loyalty go unanswered. Never again would compassion be repaid with silence. Never again would abandonment be allowed to erase a civilization. The galaxy slept beneath humanity's unseen guardianship, secure within a stability built not on domination, but on remembrance. And so, in the vast silence between stars, the legacy of Earth endured. Not as conquest. Not as empire. But as the eternal debt of gratitude, repaid across eternity. For when humanity finally returned, they did not simply settle the debt. They transformed the universe in its honor,